Thank you for listening. Welcome back to part two of our Is There a Serial Killer Stalking New England podcast. And it turns out there isn't,
Or
or
is
is there?
there?
We don't know. We might have several serial killers. We might have one very, very motivated serial killer. We might have
Mm,
just have more of a buzz, and this is just sort of the status quo of the number of people that typically get murdered or and end up having some sort of freak accident that could ambiguously be considered a homicide or something to that effect. I think. What do you think? I don't mean to laugh, but
well,
I do find it. I do find the buzz a little funny.
I have to admit
I'll just
that
hold
like
my opinion for a minute, but go ahead.
let's put aside like the actual real fear of like, oh my God, are people dying around me? Like that's a very real thing if you think it is, or even if it is. So like I'm not gonna bag on that at all, right? Because that's legit. I will like as a person who like has a love-hate relationship with social media and wants to, every other day I'm like, that's it, I quit Facebook.
Yeah, don't worry.
Uh,
I've said it's time to turn off the internet 14 times today.
right, right. So like all I get like all the time, and I read some hilarious comments and I read some god awful comments, and I'm just like, oh my God, people. I think honestly, the bigger issue here is lack of awareness or like knowledge about what's actually going on in let's just go what's actually going on in New England. So obviously my ears perk up and I pay attention when remains are found or this body's found or this thing is found or whatever. I do pay attention to that, but I'm very aware of um I do a lot of research into this stuff. So like I'm already aware of it, so it's not a surprise to me, right? So I can liken it to like when so when I lived in the last state I lived in, I didn't really follow scanners or local news or any of that. I didn't follow it.
Okay.
So admittedly, I didn't know what was going on. Like as far as I would only know what I saw. If I saw police flying by going to such and such neighborhood, you know, I knew about it. Like, but not because I read about it. It's just not a thing I did. When I moved here, I started following everything and I became very aware. I follow scanner pages and the state police and this and that because for some reason now all of a sudden I want to know more. I don't know, but I'm very aware, and of course I'm like, oh my God, the crime here is so much different from the other place I used to live. But is it? And I'm
Right.
aware that I just have more information now. So like I know of all the you know of all the I know in this area, in the state that I live in, there are tons of people dying untimelies in their car, for example, from drug overdoses. That happens, I don't even know the frequency, once a week, at least once a month. I mean, it happens all the time. Now, that's not a homicide, but
Yeah.
that
And I
is
mean,
a
we're talking like larger areas. That's going to be much more frequent.
right, right. But like my point being that like I know that here at least it happens all the time, whereas when I wasn't plugged in before, I had no idea what was happening. So I
Right.
think do you know what I mean? So I think a lot of the issue here. Now I'm not saying that there hasn't been like I've always been like, do you know how many unsolved cases there are in blah 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 state? Well, there's literally thousands of unsolved in New England, going back till
Yeah.
I don't even know how far back, but um, I know that there are.
I
I
think
have
in about 50 years, there's around, 50-ish years, there's ballpark 6,500 unsolved homicides.
I mean, I didn't add them up, but if I'm looking here, we've got yeah, there's definitely probably over 7,000.
Yeah. Even potentially a little more. Yeah.
Yeah, in
So
New England.
not uncommon. What's the population? New England, about 12. I want to say 12 or 15 million off the top of my head. I know
Uh,
Massachusetts is around 7, New Hampshire is around 1 million.
oh, I've got the population all total. I'm not sure, but
Yeah,
um,
thereabouts, right? I want
let
to say,
me just 7, 10, 11, 12, 13. We'll say New England is about 14 million people. Then that's
yeah,
all of New England. Connecticut has the oh, I'm sorry. Massachusetts has the highest population
yeah.
of 6.9 million, and Vermont has the lowest of roughly 648,000. Vermont's not even at a million. Um, Rhode Island, Maine, and New Hampshire, they all hover around a million, and Connecticut is 3.6 million. Just crazy. Like, Massachusetts has 7 million people in it.
Well, if
It's
you've ever driven anywhere
that's
near Boston, you shouldn't be. This information should not be surprising to you.
it's not a
There's
surprise, but
definitely 7 million people in Massachusetts.
I know, right? Once you
Every time I try
yeah,
to drive through or around Boston, I am reminded of this fact.
well, this is why I don't drive through Boston because fuck
Oh,
that, but
it's an absolute horrible
oh my
situation.
god.
So,
So, I, there has been as far as the recent cases, there have been a few updates, and I think we should cover those, in brief because I think it kinda sheds a little bit more light on the situation as a whole, like the current situation, right? Um, what have we got? My brain just left my head.
well, that's going to be tough for the rest
I
of your.
know, I don't know what I'm gonna hey, I hate it when this happens.
Yeah, just
Alright,
left.
let's see. It's just gone. Alright, so I know that in the Groton police case now I gotta pull all these up in front of my eyeballs. Groton has made an arrest, on the set of oh god, the set of remains found in a, cemetery in a I believe in a suitcase. This okay, the woman was 58-year-old Suzanne Wormser, and the suspect who was arrested is Donald Koffel of Groton. It seems that they live together, and he is responsible. I don't really have tons more information on that. I do know that Groton Police did a big press release about this, or press conference rather, and it is on Facebook. I admittedly did not listen to the entire thing. I just saw it today, and I haven't had a chance. It's a little bit longer. It's like 15 minutes or something to that effect. So I don't have any details from them except for them to say that they did address the fear mongering on social media and that the rumors are untrue, that Groton is not a safe city to live in, um, and that they're doing everything, et cetera, et cetera. So I would suggest you listen to that. But that particular case, which was a Groton, uh, Groton was big in the discussions online and in the news and whatnot. And so that particular situation is that appears to be more of a domestic scenario. Groton is one of the law enforcement agencies that is like, no, look, this isn't true. They're overall, law enforcement is dispelling rumors overall that these cases are connected and that we are dealing with a serial situation. So that is one update. Um, and I feel compelled to add this. It's kind of I'm just going to go into a little dark corner for a second and say that I've seen commentary about oh they're hiding something, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The whole nine. And like I have a friend. The situation may be different. I don't know all the details again. Were these people romantically involved? Were they like I don't know all of that. But I have a friend who was murdered and put into a fridge by the man she was with. So like again, like I know that these things do happen. Like just because you think whatever you think over there doesn't mean that it's not exactly what they said it was. Now, again, I'm not saying that shady law enforcement does not exist because I know that shady people exist. Like I started dealing with that when I was a teenager, and I know it happens, but it's by no means all of them. And as an aside, I am watching the Karen Reed retrial, so that gives you room for pause, certainly. Um,
Oh yeah, okay.
you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, huh. So, that aside, um, I always like to give the benefit of the doubt, while keeping a open mind. But it seems that in this particular case, like this is what it is, and that's the situation. Um,
Yeah,
what it,
and sometimes what it is, it's just like, okay, I'm not sure the details of the situation, but it was clearly someone in, people living together, close, intimate, some sort of relationship, some sort of crime of passion, something along those lines.
yeah,
It
and
happened.
I
But
saw a whole write
so,
up about the, the guy is older. I think he's 68 or something. He's a little bit older. There's no way that he could have, carried her or gotten her or transported her to the cemetery, etc. And I'm like, listen, like, I, I, people do all sorts of stuff. Just because you think like another thing is this guy is 68. So I've met some pretty, rugged 70-year-olds in my life. Just because you think they can't do it doesn't mean they can't. Like let's just
well, we
chill
gotta
for a
fuck some
minute.
shit up, man, for sure,
I'm telling you,
for
there's
sure.
like there's some old farmers that still get out there and do things. Like, come
Gotta
on,
do their
like
own choice.
yeah, like come on.
So
So again, I don't know all the details of the the Groton case, but I do know that a couple years back, like again, like this stuff happens. There was a couple in northern Vermont. I think they might have been on their honeymoon. I could be wrong. Let me look it up real quick because I wasn't planning to say this, but it just came to mind. What year was this? 2024. Yeah, on their anniversary trip. So husband and wife. Um, God, just reading about this shit is nuts. He murdered and dismembered his wife during their anniversary vacation in Vermont. Yeah. Um, this shit happens. As much as we don't want to think about it, like this legit happens. There are people in jail right now for crimes that are just unspeakable. So
yeah, and there's a lot of them, frankly.
yeah, there really is. Um,
And of all the things New England has to brag about, we did produce a lot of the serial killers,
no kidding.
and yeah, we got a lot of blood
Yeah,
on our hands there.
yeah, there's a lot of historical blood too. I mean, it's shit's going on. So also New Haven. New Haven is where Denise Leary, who was missing since last year, was found not too far from her home. This is an article from New Haven, Connecticut, WFSB.com. It looks like Channel 3 News. Rumors on social media fueled concerns about a possible serial killer in Connecticut, but New Haven police denied those claims in Denise Leary's case. 59-year-old Leary was reported as a missing person on September 30th, 2024. Her remains were found a short distance from her residence last month. We are aware of speculation on social media of a serial killer who is alleged to have murdered Denise Leary, said New Haven police. Police said they have gotten calls from People magazine and Rolling Stone in the last week inquiring about the remains of Leary found last month. They also said, this is nuts. They also said it has gone as far as someone from Florida knocking on doors in the neighborhood and reaching out to the family inquiring about any possible links to other remains in New England. To the people to
What the
the
fuck?
To the people who are avidly investigating, we're hiring. Feel free to come apply, said Officer Christian Bruckhart, New Haven Police Department. According to the police, the cause of her death was ruled as undetermined. However, they said there were no signs of foul play found during Leary's autopsy. There's speculation rampant on social media. It seems to be growing, and there's no basis behind it. Social media can speculate, but we have to deal with facts. There are no facts to support this woman was murdered, said Officer Bruckhart. I get there's a sense of wanting to investigate, interest in social media or online, but this woman had a family she was loved, the family needs to grieve. Police are still investigating the death, but said at this time there is no indication of any criminality in Leary's disappearance or subsequent location. New Haven authorities offered their condolences to Leary's family and friends and asked that their privacy be respected as they grieve their loss. This comes on the heels of the discovery of human remains found around New England last month, including in Groton and Danielson. Remains have been found in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. In total, blah blah blah. Remains. Basically, they're saying that they're not. This case is not connected, at least. Again, people say law enforcement is lying and whatever, but and they could be, but I mean, I'm at this point seeing that these situations are not related. Um, at least not Groton and New Haven and Foster, Rhode Island. And two of those have very specifically the families have reached out in the case of Michelle Romano and who was found in deceased in Foster, and Denise Leary in New Haven have very specifically asked for people to basically back off, like knock it off, because you're messing with our like this isn't cool what you're doing, like knocking door to door, like that's just chill out, like
Yeah, it's not just a like internet sensation. It's not a
right.
like internet sensation. I sound like I'm like 80.
Internet sensation.
I'm an internet sensation, young man. Mm.
Well, hey, you're getting there.
Whoa, hold up. It's like it's real life. People are grieving. People are
No shit.
lost family members.
Like I get upset like when somebody says something about me that just isn't true or is whatever. It just bothers me, right? It's one of those things. I absolutely hate it. So, and I'm not even dealing with a huge tragedy like that. Okay, I would like to share a quick commentary made by on Facebook by Murder She Told podcast. This is a Maine and New England true crime podcast advocating for the victims, and she shared the article from the Rolling Stone. The Rolling Stone did an article about this whole situation. And with the article, she says that this article captures a lot of her feelings, and it's the first one that she's seen that doesn't lean into the mystery and the clickbait. The excerpt I will read from her post is: "What's been especially heartbreaking is seeing family members of the deceased pleading with the public and media not to associate their loved ones with serial killer theories. Many of these same families were begging for attention and awareness when their loved one was first missing, long before their deaths became a part of a viral trend. Every person, regardless of the cause and manner of death, leaves behind a loved one who are grieving. These individuals are more than a headline, a Reddit thread, or even a TikTok video. They are deeply loved and they are deeply missed. This is not to dismiss the very real concern about the number of deaths in New England lately. I'm not saying definitively that none of these cases, past or present, are connected. It's important to have conversations about public safety and patterns when appropriate, but I urge everyone to lead with empathy. Be mindful of the words you share. Real families are reading them." So, like, again, like, I urge that also, like, interesting thing, like kind of like a flashback to the Connecticut River Valley murders, which are unsolved to this day. And if you don't know about those and you're sitting over here spouting about, oh my God, it's a serial killer, go look into that, because I have opinions about that and other certain situations in New England. But could we have always had a serial killer since the 80s? I don't know. But anyway, um,
Probably several.
Yeah. Oh, they're definitely like if just look at the unsolved cases. It's nuts. Anyway, all right. In May of 1984, Bernice Courtemarche, age 17, was last seen in Claremont, New Hampshire. She was reported missing the following day. Her skeletal remains were found nearly 2 years later in April of 1986 in Newport, New Hampshire. She had been stabbed to death. All right. The interesting thing related to people begging for attention and when their loved one goes missing, and in in the 80s, it seems that Bernice was very much treated as a runaway, even though the family and everyone's insisting that that's not what happened. When you go through the papers, there's very little coverage of Bernice. Meanwhile, in July of 1984, Ellen Freed goes missing, and there was, I think 11 days of searching, um, all this coverage. It was crazy. It was all over the paper. But meanwhile, Bernice gets just a little bit of. She doesn't get much coverage at all, and she's kind of, as far as the media is concerned, pushed to the wayside. And as soon as they decide or figure out that they have to put a task force together to because we have a serial situation happening, all of a sudden Bernice comes into the limelight, and it's like, what the hell, like this is also how this happens, like even back then and to this day, and it's just a parallel I want to just kind of throw in there. um and it's unfortunate that this is how it goes. America really does have this crazy like thing with serial killers, and it is America. All right, so
America.
America, yeah. So moving along, other updates. There was the um, double homicide in Salem. There was an arrest made in that with that, and then there
Okay.
was the Hampton District Attorney's Office did make a statement. Um, the victim identified in Riverfront Park homicide. So there was indeed a homicide in Springfield near the bike path. A adult female was pronounced deceased shortly after 8 a.m. on Tuesday, April 22nd. The victim has been identified as Megan Meredith, 45, and the incident is under investigation. So that um, those are kind of some of the updates.
Hmm.
There, the last update. So we talked about this in the last episode, but we didn't go crazy into it. That there was a person in one of the online Facebook groups. There's two of them right now, but they're virtually the same. It used to be New England Serial Killer, and it, Facebook took away the name, and it's pending review or something. So the name is group title pending, and there's a backup group for that group called NE. What is it? I think it's New England SK. Um, and in one of those groups, somebody started posting these very cryptic posts, and I don't have them in front of me, but they were talking about being, I think, buried in the sand, and they were just very telling and cryptic, and weird. And we discovered that the letters at the beginning of every sentence spelled out like Black Point, and things like that. It was just very like, it felt very Hollywood to me personally.
Yeah, it really was.
You know what I mean? It was like, and people were like, "Oh my god!" Did that, da, 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 da."
You're like,
Like, what does it
turn
all
the paper
mean?
upside down, and it's a pirate hat.
I know, and they're like Black Point, and honestly, I thought of Black Point Lane in Portsmouth, but whatever. But it it, it kind of people were analyzing it, and all I could think of was like AI. Like as an aside,
Mm-hmm.
um, I
Low.
one time, I don't remember why. I think I was just looking for, what I was doing? I was doing our shorts, and I was looking for just a compilation of cases. So I think I went into Chat GPT, which I use occasionally, but not often. And this is why I put in, give me 5 unsolved homicides from New England from 1920 to 1970 or something like that. and it sent me back 5 in, with dates and names and circumstances and everything, and I'm like, "Damn, are these real cases? Holy shit, thanks AI." But then I'm like, mm. So I went back and I researched all. They were all completely made up, and I'm like, wow, that's AI for you. So that's why I don't use AI. But it was very much like AI can make up whatever the hell you want it to make up. So that being said, I guess this quote unquote confession, and there was like one confession post and then another comment, I think, if I recall correctly. Um, and they got reported to the authorities, and Narragansett, Rhode Island Police Department did issue an update on Thursday, which was it's Saturday right now. Update. During the past week, the Narragansett police were made aware of concerning posts circulating online where the author posted anonymously in a Facebook group dedicated to New England serial killers. Only the group administrator could see the actual username of the individual. The post alluded to the possibility that multiple bodies were buried in in the oh, were buried in Black Point area of Scarborough Beach. The anonymous poster commented numerous times in the group about it being a metaphorical and literary work. The user also posted that they were working on a novel and that users were over-analyzing a work of fiction. With that information, Narragansett detectives, along with two RISP cadaver canines, conducted an extensive search of the area with negative results for any clandestine graves. Narragansett detectives have also been in communication with the FBI regarding this matter. So, my God, I'm gonna just say clandestine graves. I'm sorry, I am not trying to make light of it, but when I saw that they referred to it as such, I'm just like, oh my God. Like, yes, they're taking it seriously, but they're also like, what the fuck, like, really? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I was actually just out there the other day.
Oh, really? I've actually never been to that where so I guess they were talking about a ruin, and there is the stone, the ruins out there. I've never actually been to the ruins, which why I need to. But yeah, I guess nothing came of it, and but they did investigate. Um, it, I mean, you have to take these things seriously, but at the same time, it's like shit like this. It's there's nothing. Apparently, nothing comes of it. You know what I mean? Which brings me to our. This is in response to the video in Groton, and this is from um the administrator and owner of those two groups. Her name's Jennifer, and she had posted the Groton video, and this was what she said above it. Um, I'm glad they solved her case. May she rest in peace. And the loser who did that to her rot in prison. Groton City PD deserves to be commended for the way they handled her case and the rampant chaos that ensued. When I shared the post about her unidentified remains, it wasn't to cause panic, it was to bring awareness. Social media has already been in a frenzy prior to my post. I didn't realize that was happening until I woke up to about 1,500 plus member requests. The group had an influx of members, a lot of whom were sharing misinformation about many cases. The purpose of this group was to discuss Boston's Vanishing Men, a place for me to keep my research collectively together and to raise awareness for missing persons, unsolved murders/murders that are solved but stalled and have not gotten justice, local events pertaining to rallies, memorials, search parties, etc. I did not create this group to convince people that there is a serial killer in Connecticut, but yes, I absolutely believe there is more than one sick freak that has been prowling the New England area. I have my own beliefs, have privately done a lot of research on hundreds of cases in New England. Many get solved, but a lot still remain cold.
Yeah.
And yeah, because I joined this group a while back, and it was about I joined it because of I saw it was about the Boston's Vanishing Men, and I was like, you and I had discussed this as um a topic, but I knew nothing about it. I really just didn't. I hadn't dived into it at all. So I was like, oh no shit, like somebody else is doing this. Cool, like
Smiley face killings or something, smiley face murders. And that's
yeah,
another one. Everybody's like, "Oh, it's a cover up. The police aren't saying anything," and it's just, it's great. You know, because on one hand, you want to say like, "Oh, you know what? They're just doing their job. They're investigating, blah blah blah." But on the other hand, you look at other cases and you're like, "Oh well." You know, you mentioned Karen Reed, and you're like, "Oh yeah, that was definitely some foul play among the investigators and this and
yeah,
that." There's numerous other cases. I feel like the same could be, most likely said about the Maura Murray case. Some of that could be attributed to just incompetence or lack of resources, which is also potentially an issue
uh huh.
in some of these cases. Um, so it's like, what's really going on? Anyways, I'm rambling. But
Well, that's definitely true. Is that a lot of people think that the thing is I think again I think there's when you don't know something, like if you don't understand how certain aspects of law enforcement work, or like I don't know how to nutshell this, but like if you don't understand how like chain of not command, but chain of evidence works, or how investigations function, or like all of that kind of stuff. If you don't know what the law is for that particular state, for example, like some New England states, like you really start to learn this if you really start to investigate these past cases and like how they operate. It's not the way that like the general public thinks that they operate. So like there's a lot of factors, and I'm not saying, like, again, I will never say that shady people don't exist, because everywhere you go, here's the thing. Here's the thing I've learned about people. So you go into any circle, whether it's this Facebook group, the law enforcement involved in these cases, the podcasters who are covering it, the news that's covering it, the general public, in all of those circles, there's going to be people who are morally good, people who are not morally good. So like you're gonna have corrupt police, you're gonna have good police, you're gonna have corrupt news anchors, you're gonna have good news anchors. You know what I mean? Like it's not one or the other. Like both can be true. So I think
it seems to be a common thread, and sometimes they are just investigating, and like they don't release all the information to the public. So
right.
the smiley face murders, for example, it's just, I want to say that was a little over a year ago, right? Yeah,
Oh, I
I,
I
I
think
or, but at least heard about it happening because we were talking about it for quite some time, and then
yeah.
I dug into, I've heard mention of the smiley face in like prior to this, and even other areas. So I think, just kind of shooting from the hip on this. I'm just kind of wondering what the significance is or the symbolism is there. Um, but like, there's definitely something going on there,
Oh, I think so.
and
I
that's,
mean,
I
I
think,
would, yeah, it's
I
go ahead.
think like the possibility, we introed into the episode, and I was like, just kind of with a lot of skepticism about the serial killer, but I do still think that there are these people that are among us.
Oh yeah.
Definitely. You mentioned
Well,
the group was created for this, and there's definitely someone there. And I doubt, people are getting crazy. Like, oh, Connecticut, Mass, Rhode Island, even Southern New Hampshire. I'm like, I don't think a serial killer is operating in all those places. But, you see people, you see a string of similar murders or similar deaths in downtown Boston area. Like, it's reasonable to say that's
right.
that's a serial killer, you know?
Well, if you all right, well that brings us to our next round of data.
Spin the
Okay.
wheel, spin the wheel.
Homicide data for New England. All right. So let's
Unsolved murders for 300, Alex.
no shit. So I thought, because people are like, "Oh my god, are there deaths and bodies?" And "Oh my god, like, okay. Well, what are the stats?" As we discussed earlier, we've got about what do we say, 14-ish million in New England. Was that it? I think it's about 14
Yeah,
million
thereabouts.
population.
Thereabouts.
Oh, not homicides, people. About
Population,
14.
yeah.
A 14 million population in New England
It's
in
not 12.
general.
Oh, geez, that's
Yeah, no
alarming.
shit. Whoops. Nope. I mean,
Turns out we had our numbers wrong, and
sorry about
we are
for,
sorry for alarming you.
forget forget my last. They're like, see, I told you. Okay, so all right. This is for 2023. This is 1 year. Okay, so in Connecticut in 2023, there were 137 homicides. The offender ages, 33% of them were between 20 and 29. The victim age, 28% of them were between 30 and 39. The location where these occurred were outside, like road, alley, sidewalk, etc. 48% of them. 46% of the like the relationship between the victim and the offender was unknown, as in they didn't know the relationship, which is interesting. And 51% of them were done with a firearm. So moving on to Maine with a population of 1.3 million. Connecticut has a population of 3.6 million, by the way. So Maine, population of 1.3 million in 2023 had 60 homicides. 29% of them, the offender was between 40 and 49. 22%, my eyeballs, the victim was between 50 and 59. So we're a little bit older. 53% of them were done at a residence. 38% of them, the relation was stranger. So that's actually an interesting, and it's interesting. 38 of the homicides in Maine in 2023 were done by stranger. 32% of them were done with a handgun, and 24% of them were done with a cutting instrument. Massachusetts, 6.9 million, 145 homicides. 40% of the offenders were between 20 and 29. 29% of the victims. So the numbers I'm giving you are the highest number. So like the highest percentage. So 29% of the victims were between 20 and 29. 43% were at a residence, like the person's residence, and 37% were outside, like you know what I said, sidewalk, alley, park, whatever. Um, Again, relation unknown, 40%. 36 done with a firearm, 35% done with a handgun. New Hampshire, 1.4 million, 25 homicides. 31% of the offenders were between 20 and 29. Victims were between 50 and 59, 24%. Again, these are the highest number, like the highest percentage. Everything else is there's no other age group that is this high of a percentage. 56% were done in the somebody's residence. 22% of the offender victim relationship were boyfriend girlfriend. So that's interesting. There's more in New Hampshire. There's more personal at home, a little bit older, um, than the other two that we've talked about so far, or three rather. And 38% of them were done with personal weapons. Now, I'm not really sure what a personal weapon is. This data is from
So wait, just let me pause. So every category you just named, that is the highest in that state. So you're saying,
yeah,
22% was boyfriend girlfriend. So there's no other category for that state that was higher
right, exactly.
for each of those pieces of information, correct?
Yeah, right. So underneath the relationship, so you would have things like stranger, acquaintance, friend, family, whatever other relationship, stranger, like, and they break down to less than. That is the biggest group. Is 22% of the homicides were a boyfriend and girlfriend relationship. Everything else is less, right? So that's for all of these percentages. That's what it is. And this is from the FBI crime data something or other. I forget the actual word. FBI crime data by state. Um, Rhode Island, Where are we? Rhode Island. Population of 1.1 million. 29 homicides in Rhode Island compared to the population.
Not bad,
32%.
Rhode Island.
I know, right? I was shocked. I was like, oh, huh. So offender age, 32% were between 20 and 29. Victim age, again, 20 to 29, 28%. 62% of these were done in residence, by an acquaintance, 27%, with a firearm, 35%. Vermont, population of 648 or so thousand, 648,000. Where do we go? 17 homicides in 2023. Offender age, 38% averaged 30 to 39. Also, the victims, 30 to 39, 29%. 59% done at home by an acquaintance, which was half. Half of them were done by an acquaintance with a handgun, 31%. So, what we can gather from this info,
Well, that's much higher than all the other ones. The acquaintance,
yeah,
50%, literally
yeah.
50%. That's crazy.
Well, the interesting thing is, with the exception of Connecticut and Massachusetts, who don't seem to have the data of the relationship, all of them are um, Maine, interestingly, is 38% of their murders were done by strangers. Like there were no what's it called? No relationship previous,
Mhm.
which is crazy. Um, Rhode Island and Vermont, acquaintance led. So was New Hampshire. Although New Hampshire is interesting because now let's actually break this down a little further to say that Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont have very their gun laws are less. Like they're open carry. You can open carry in New Hampshire and Vermont, and I'm pretty sure Maine too. I think they're all reciprocal. Like they're all very you can open carry. Rhode Island, Mass, and Connecticut, however, you need permits to do so. You can't just carry. And I don't even think there is an open carry permit in any of those states. I'm pretty sure they're all concealed carry.
I
Um,
mean, there's conditional permits, but
yeah, I'm not 100% on that, but I will say that, two of the states. I mean, it's interesting though. Rhode Island's a kind of an outlier. You know what I mean? Because Rhode Island is very densely populated. I mean, it's the smallest state, and it's got, you know, it's very near Maine in population. In New Hampshire, and it's very densely populated in the areas where it's populated. You know what I mean, like around the bay. But they only had 29 murders in 29 homicides rather in 2023 versus say Connecticut, which had 137. So I don't know. It's just that was interesting to me. They're up there with like New Hampshire and with their but they're I'm not sure. I think Rhode Island has less. Is Rhode Island strict or less strict or more strict than Mass and Connecticut with firearms? I think it's less strict. No.
Rhode Island is. I feel like they're kind of. I don't think they're going to be as bad as Massachusetts or Connecticut, but they're pretty. Yeah, they're
They're
pretty.
not as loose as Vermont or New Hampshire.
No.
I mean, most states aren't. I mentioned this because
I don't know
somebody said.
specifically. I mean, I don't live in Rhode Island, so I can't really say. But just
Right, right.
things I've heard seems like they're generally not the best.
Oh, for like their laws and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and I mentioned this because I actually wanted to see the stats on this because somebody said in the group that's why there's been no bodies, something to the effect of that's why there's been no bodies found in New Hampshire because we have something about the carry laws. And I said, do you know how many unsolved homicides there are in New Hampshire? And I was like don't get smart yet, because while this may not be specifically like serial killer, I mean, I'm not saying it is or it isn't, because I don't actually know. A lot of these cases do not appear to be connected, in my opinion, based on what's coming out. But that doesn't mean there isn't any previous stuff, or there aren't. I mean, there's still a lot of unsolved. So I looked it up. So what exactly are the stats, right? Per state in New England.
Hmm.
So let's start with the highest population state. Massachusetts has 4,050 unsolved homicides. And as we've discussed, Massachusetts has a population of almost 7 million.
Hmm.
Connecticut, 3.6 million, has 2,038 unsolved. Rhode Island, population of 1.1 million, has 658 unsolved. New Hampshire, 1.4 million, has 338 unsolved, which I thought was a lot until
Till we
I
started looking at Massachusetts.
until I looked at Massachusetts and I'm like, oh. However, though, let's wait. Hold on. Maine has population of 1.3 million and 292 unsolved. Vermont 648,000 and 217 unsolved. So I am not very good at figuring out like proportions. However,
What were the last two? What were Vermont and Maine?
Maine is 292, Vermont is 217.
Okay, gotcha.
So proportionately, oh gosh. All right. So if Massachusetts is 7 million, Rhode Island is like 1/7 the population of Massachusetts. So actually, this is about I mean, it's slightly unproportionate, but the proportions are still there if you take Mass versus Rhode Island. And then you take, well, you know what though? Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont are still less, even proportionately. Mm.
True story.
So, is that guy right? Like,
Does gun control really work?
huh, is that why? Well, I mean, if you look
That's not the
back,
focus of our episode, but
no, it's not. Oh my God. Um, where'd it go? Maine, stranger homicides, people who kill people they don't know, is actually the leading relationship in Maine, which doesn't help and the thing is the main weapon in all of these is guns.
yeah,
So there's
not fun.
that. But like, I don't know. I mean, this is from the FBI, so like I'm inclined to believe it, but I don't know. I also had trouble believing that Rhode Island only had 29. I was like, is that true that Rhode Island only had 29? I mean, I guess it could be. So I don't know.
Island had its shit together that year. I don't know.
I guess so. Rhode Island was just like having a good day. I don't fucking know. I don't know. So those are just like homicides happen, and this isn't even I didn't even look into like accidental deaths or overdoses or whatever other reasons you could die from. This is simply homicides. So like I said, I as we know, I live in Vermont, and there is a lots and lots of major drug problem here. We have the smallest population. I think we're the second least populated state in America. I think Vermont is like per capita, whatever. But there's some serious drug issues here, and I can't tell you how many. I don't want to say deaths I've seen, but deaths I've like driven by. I actually there was someone who died on their lawn. My
Ooh, really?
neighbor, yeah, dude. I couldn't. I was far enough away to where like I couldn't see it like exactly. I knew what was happening, but I was probably, oh my God, 500 feet away maybe from in my yard versus theirs, and I saw the police show up and they did compressions for like 30 minutes. Then they declared, he was obviously declared dead. Everybody left. And then the state police sat with the body. They covered it with a sheet. And the state police for like 3 hours. I was like, oh my God, can you imagine like being the concept of like dead bodies is just, and then the medical examiner shows up and they put the body into the back of the vehicle, and then they have to drive to probably wherever they go. I don't know where the medical examiner, Montpelier maybe, I have no idea. Wherever the medical examiner's office is, with a deceased person in the back. Like, what the fuck? Like, I don't know. So, the and then, there's a lot of, you'll see over the scanner, untimely, someone in their car in a parking lot, at the gas station. Like that's happened a couple times, or somebody at the, this scenic overlook, died in their car. So,
Yeah.
when you're finding remains, or I'm sorry, you find a body, that can also be what it is. Like, I'm not saying, again, like that's not always what it is, but that happens too. And I don't know. I think we should remain vigilant and all the things, but um I see some of the, I go through, like I said, the comments, and there's a lot of I saw one post earlier where somebody, I swear they were talking about it like, I don't know if you've ever seen any of those criminal profiling shows, but like it's almost like they were acting out like being an actor in that show. Like, I've seen people use words like unsub, and I'm just like, all right, look, like we're not in for what's that? Criminal Minds, is it? Like,
Criminal
stop.
Minds,
We're
yeah.
not. This isn't Hollywood. Just stop. Just stop. Like, but they wrote out a whole thing about, the killer sees women as blah 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 and blah 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 blah, and
God.
they the location is there, blah blah blah, and I'm
I
just
mean,
like,
we're choosing to focus on a fairly narrow area because I think there's been some hype, and it's been on social media a bit, but it's also been in some of the news stories, right? Because
yeah,
I think it's been, it's been kind of published that, oh, there's a killer stalking these wealthy beach towns, and I'm like, hold on, it worked for me because it caught my attention. I was like, really, what's going on?
right.
Like, wait a minute, Framingham, like like he, I don't know.
It's Martha's Vineyard.
This killer
No.
is working his fucking balls off, walking up and down the fucking South Coast to all these affluent communities and just wreaking fucking havoc, kid.
Hey, how you doing,
Fucking
Bob?
quiet.
Stop. Don't stop yet. Oh, it hurts. Oh shit. All right. Oh, I needed that. All right. I hope everyone else needed that too. Okay. Um
Thank you,
well,
2 hour 25 subscribers for listening.
hey, we appreciate you. We do. Hey, you gotta start somewhere. So which also I thought I found some more serial killer stats, because researching how other people kill other people is fun. Not. But I did, after reading some of the commentary
Yeah,
over
just
the
careful what
past.
you Google in your house. You know what I mean?
No shit, right? They're like, yeah,
Don't
so
worry, I did it from a burner laptop.
yeah, okay.
Speaking
The
of
only
Hollywood.
reason I can only get away with this because we have a podcast, all right? So like like, no, I'm just researching. Side note, I know somebody years ago. This was when like BitTorrents were a thing. Like, the freaking some authority showed up at their house because he was illegally downloading BitTorrents or something. Like, that's no joke. I mean, I'm not worried about it because I'm just researching, but I'm not researching like how long to die in the cold or anything. um So I found
Oh,
this. Oh,
pause. If anybody
sorry.
didn't get that reference,
Oh my
you
God.
know, Karen Reed's innocent.
Oh,
Excuse me.
oh my Lord. How
Haas,
to,
Haas to die, Mary.
sorry. How, oh, stop it. Oh, that's it. I've also been
Oh, I said
watching
your
the,
name.
I have been trying to be current on the retrial, and I highly suggest, okay, like, look, I have been watching trials since OJ Simpson, and I was like 10 or something. Like, I was a
I've
kid.
been watching trials since the Salem witch trial. Tell you something.
Let me tell you what.
I have
I'll
seen.
tell you what. I've been watching
He
trials
died
since the beginning of the.
dysentery.
Give
Give
me
me
the
the one.
watch.
Sorry.
Yes. um. Yeah. So it's 12:34. So
Yeah, I forget what we were talking about. We're kind of going off.
trials. Well, no, I've been watching trials since OJ Simpson, and I am a big. It's such a. It's tedious and it sucks. But if you can watch a trial, it's my opinion that if there's something big happening, you shouldn't have an opinion if you didn't watch the trial, right? So like, there's so much
Yeah,
information
you
in
like people just make opinions without having any fucking information whatsoever.
right, exactly. Like,
You should make an effort in all things to get as informed as possible. Yeah.
no, and it's also helpful to learn how our legal system works and how investigations work. And I think I mentioned this previously, but I learned from watching Michael Proctor in not this trial, but the first one, the Karen Reed trial, that he said that he just takes people's word for it for their alibis, evidence, whatever. And I'm like, huh, how many other law enforcement officers do that? You know what I mean? Like, so if I have proof of something or don't have proof, or I was here, I wasn't there, and a cop asks me that, like, what did you see? Or and I'm like, well, no, I know this happened or whatever. I would only say things that I had proof of, right? I would expect that the cop would take my like that's part of the investigation. Well, he didn't do that. And I'm like, do other police do that too? Like they just take people for their word? That's not correct, right? So like it's just very interesting to learn these things. Um how
Well,
the
did he
legal
say he didn't for that investigation or
for
just?
that well, for that investigation, yes. I don't know if that's for all of them, but
Well, I mean,
he's not
we
exactly
know that
the
one was quote unquote by the books and completely.
yeah, no shit.
So there's that.
Well, I wouldn't say he exactly
But if it, you bring up, I mean, you bring up a good point. It's like if you did it one time, like probably happened
right.
times, like so.
How often do it's just I've seen you also really learn how prosecutors work and prosecution versus defense and how rules of evidence work. I found this annual report on serial killer statistics from Florida Gulf Coast Florida Gulf Coast oh my gosh, Florida Gulf Coast University and
Oh,
Radford University. So I guess they do this every year, and this is also from 2023. It's a huge paper, a huge report, I should say. Serial killer database, serial killer data. Um, it's really the purpose of this seems to be to just gather info. So they have databases. It's like they say, their purpose is not to get into the mind of a serial killer. That's not what they're doing. They're really just getting data. So this project began um, in the 1990s, the early 90s, and um, they just started researching. There was a class, a forensic psychology class at Radford University, and they seem to have just started gathering info. So I didn't isolate things. Like I just found this as I was just kind of poking around the internet because I was compelled by some of the comments I saw in the groups, and I wanted to gather some quick data, and I wanted to find another, another data bank, and I found one. So, a serial killer is defined as there's two criteria. It's at least two people. Sometimes it's three. It depends how it's referenced. Like the FBI definition is unlawful killing of two or more victims by the same offenders in separate events. So like you would do one and then the other, not two at a time. Or there's also like I'm not going to get into the nuance of like spree killing versus mass murder versus this is like one or one person, two or more locations, two or more victims, basically. Um, they get into all sorts of other stuff, but I'm not going to get into that. Bear with as I scroll through, because like I said, I just kind of found this. The number of known serial killers peaked in the United States in the 1980s and has declined each decade since then. They go into national statistics too, which is actually fascinating. I'm not going to super get into that, but
I mean,
the
it'd be a lot harder to pull that off today than it would be in like the 80s or early 90s.
oh yeah, well
You
I think that's why
know, aliens,
um,
smartphones, social media.
right, and this the number of serial killer victims in the United States peaked at 414 in 1987. So that means in 1987 there were 414 victims of serial killers, and it has generally declined each subsequent year. So it's on a downtrend. Oh, there's so many tables of data here, and it goes through all the victims by year. Uh, um, at any given time, there's an average of 122 active serial killers, like currently, like all the time. There are several factors. The question is, why has there been a decrease in the number of serial killers in the United States? This is interesting. There are several factors that probably contribute to this decline. The increase in technology has made it more difficult for serial killers with motives such as insurance fraud, e.g., black widows, to go undetected. So that's the thing is that like the percentage of women serial killers, their motive is money, whereas male, the motive is I forget if they use the word pleasure or something to that effect, gratification or something like that's a whole other topic, but it's not money. And generally for women, it's the reason women kill is usually financial. Interesting. Strict, which actually will bring me to a next point or a later point about female serial killers. But um, another factor is stricter parole policies have put fewer potential serial killers back on the streets. Since the 1950s in the United States, 17.9% of the serial killers in our database killed again after being released from prison for a prior homicide. This figure, combined with the fact that 79% of the U.S. serial killers spent time in jail or prison prior to their first murder, supports the relationship between longer prison sentences and decreased serial killer frequency. There is a decreased availability of high-risk targets for serial killers. That is, there are fewer people hitchhiking, offering rides to strangers, and walking to school. As shown in Table 3.5, some of the largest decreases in serial killer victim types from 1980 to 1999 to 2000 to 2019 are hitchhiking related, abductions from shopping centers, and disabled motorists or Good Samaritans. So that talks about like the kind of situation you're in when you are like a victim, if you will. Often there, somewhere it says the number of hitchhikers, and it's a risk factor. Hitchhiking is definitely a risk factor for um, serial murder. Okay, so
Yeah, a lot of that.
interestingly, now I'm not 100% sure. This is serial killers by country. All right, so this is a table with at least So all of the countries in this list, countries with at least 10 identified serial killers. So like if they have less than 10, they're not even on the list. But the number of serial killers in their country, this is nuts to me. So I'll read some other countries first. Let's start with England. The number of serial killers in England, and I'm not sure what time period this is from without really diving into it, but let's just say maybe this is all time. I'm not sure. But let's say England has 182, Russia 164, Japan 138, um, China 68, Mexico 64, Colombia 24. Okay, those are the number of serial killers in these countries. The United States 3,690. America has 64% of the world's serial killers.
And this is all time, right?
I think it's all time. Let me go back up.
Well, it must be. I mean,
It's got to be all
at
time. Like
least
I'm
until since it's been recorded, whatever
yeah,
that.
I think it's from I think this is all time. I think it's all because I'm looking through their their explanation in it. 64% of the identified serial killers are from the United States. That's so many more than all of the places, like every place. That's nuts to me. Seeing this in print in front of my eyeballs is like staggering. So fun fact about America. I don't understand.
Fun fact:
Fun fact. All right.
we are by and large the worst.
Now,
Right on.
percentage of what percentage of serial killers are women? So nowadays, from 1900 on, across all time periods, approximately 11% of serial killers have been women. Interestingly, pre 1900, men and women were like half and half serial killers. So half of the serial killers were men and half were women. And that number, like I said earlier, I think it declined the most after 1920. Now, I this is probably another topic we could get into, but I wondered, why is that so? Why would there be, men and women neck and neck? Prior to 1900, there were 112 female serial killers and 138 male. Why would it suddenly decrease to now where we are? Although, it kind of it goes up and down. There was a for some reason some massive peak in the 80s. Like what happened in the 80s that from like 1980 to 2000, and then it dropped. But like what the hell happened then?
I think a lot of it's technology in that period. That 1980, you didn't have all the cameras, you didn't have cell phones, you didn't have the internet.
No, I mean like there was a peak in the 80s. So like why? What happened in the 80s that made that happen?
Right. I
You see what I'm saying?
see what you're saying. I'm just wondering, like, in terms of, you said around 1920, they were there, it was about 50-50. I just wonder, like,
Well,
how accurately was all this recorded? Because
well,
it's,
pre 1900 there was they were 50-50.
but I'm just wondering, like, how do we know? Some of it's speculative because some of these people haven't been caught. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's a good point.
You assume that they're responsible for X murder, this and that. You know what I mean? So like,
Hmm.
I'm just wondering, how is that data recorded? How is that processed? You know?
I mean, yeah, I'm sure like in the beginning of this they talk about that stuff. I didn't retain it all. But I know that they've got data from. But you're right. I mean, especially back then, um, records were different, and a lot of people weren't caught. And
Yeah,
Um,
some of them were, I'm sure, and they have confessions, and they, just like
right.
they
Well,
sort
if
of
you look too, like I said, there's a whole bunch of um like when I was doing the research for Dudleytown and into the local papers, you see a lot of, you know, body found in the basement sort of stuff. Like what? Like all of a sudden, it's all over the papers and they might not necessarily know who that person is. I did see a lot of that. And back in the day, it was a lot easier to, I mean, they still had, you know, you still had ways of monitoring people, but it wasn't anywhere near what we have today. So it would be much easier to, if, you know, you could leave town and start over somewhere else and people literally didn't know you, like, and they never would. But that doesn't happen now. There's no way you could get away with that. Well, I don't think you could get away with that today.
it'd be much more difficult. I mean, you think
Yeah,
even
way more difficult.
100 years ago, let's say 1925, you could pretty, let's say you lived in Boston and you had to start over. You killed somebody and people found out. You could move places and just start over for sure. Like you're saying, you could move to
Right.
Chicago, start over.
Yeah.
Nobody
No,
knows.
you could.
Like there's no. I mean, maybe if you were someone like serious, like maybe I don't know if it was very high profile, something along those lines where you're already known. But if you were just a nobody, you could absolutely do that. You could absolutely pick up and move
Mhm.
overnight.
I'll never forget and I don't know the guy's name at all. At all. And I don't even remember where I saw the story, but and I don't even remember when, but there was a man who he traveled across the country and I forget how he would pick women up, but he would pick them up and, um, and their lives. And it took a long time for him to get caught because, I think he started out in like maybe California and he went all the way to like Tennessee or something. Like,
Mm.
again, I don't remember all the details, but because and this was a little, maybe it was in the 90s or 2000s, maybe it wasn't like super far back, but um, because of that, he was able to get away with it for as long as he did. And it was when you finally got to the end of it, it was like, oh my God, like there were a lot, but that's how he got away with it because he was just able to leave and just bounce.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There were a number of serial killers. There was another guy. I'm not sure if this is the same person you're talking about, but I've heard a couple examples of this, and the name escapes me too. But he would go to national parks in different states,
Oh God.
kind of prey on people. You know, and you're
Yeah.
talking, you know, kind of like what you described at Miles Standish, where you're just like in the camping area, like
Yeah.
the things happen to people, man. It's like
No, it does.
like
That's the thing. And
you
if
can you can target somebody is right there, like,
mhm.
and especially if you have like the a friendly demeanor about you, you can get people to drop their guard, and then that's
Yep.
how you can strike. Ted
Well,
Bundy. Ted Bundy was that was his thing. He was handsome, and he pretend. I think he was like he'd pretend like he had a flat tire or something. He'd be broken down on the side of the road, and somebody would come to help him.
yeah.
He'd be like, "Oh, you know what? Can you just give me a?" Or pretend he ran out of gas. He's like, "I got my gas can here. Can you just give me a ride that couple blocks down to the gas station? Just let me fill up, and if you could just give me a ride back, I'll give you $20.
Yeah.
That sort of thing." Or
Jeez. I feel like he was
Dean Borowski. It was I think the
God.
encounter. She mentioned how the guy did the same thing where
He asked about the payphone.
he asked if he had a quarter
Yeah, is the payphone
or if,
working?
or if the payphone was working. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
something that's just normal, just a normal friendly thing to make her let her guard down.
Well, that's the thing too with actually if you want to go to and this was a discussion in I believe the Dark Valley podcast talked about this discussion, but the guy picked up. He did pick up some of them hitchhiking. Three, I think. I'm gonna just say three. Yeah, three, because Mary, Betsy Critchley, Bernice, and Eva were hitchhiking. Um, so he has to be some sort of normal. I hate to use the word normal, but like you
Yeah.
know, to get into somebody's car, you know, he has to have at least. I mean, from everything I've heard about hitchhiking, the people who hitchhike. I've never hitchhiked, but I've known a lot of people who have. And
Mhm.
actually, it's funny because when we moved here to Vermont, hitchhiking is still wicked happens here, and it's not something I'm used to seeing. Back in the more populated place I used to live, like it's not a thing there like it is here. And so in the summertime, you'll see on the green, not the Green Mountain Trail, the because the Appalachian Trail runs right through Vermont, so you see tons of hitchhikers. Um, but yeah, like you have to have some sort of demeanor to be able to pick someone up hitchhiking.
Mhm.
And this talks about victim type, and the number one victim type. It says it's just general public on the street. And then interestingly, the next one is family or boyfriend, girlfriend, so someone known to you. Then home invasion is fucking terrifying in my opinion. Um, Street people like homeless or prostitutes, employee or customer, that's crazy, people you work with, and then Johns or sexual encounters, and then hitchhikers is last, which is interesting.
Mhm.
Um, Although if this is a yearly report, this might be per year. I'm not really sure what these numbers are, but just some random info. And I thought I had seen something about America's. Oh, actually, that's what we can close with. Where is it? Where is it? It's on my phone.
I think we need to close with. I'm just going to repeat what I just said. If at any time, we have a lot of homicides that happen here regularly, whether there's an active serial killer or there isn't, it's always a good idea to stay safe. And, aside from like protecting yourself with something on you,
Right.
be fucking alert, be safe. Like these people are they'll try to take advantage of you by acting normal, by trying to gain your trust. Like, and I'm not saying you need to be cold to everybody, but it's like these circumstances where you might find yourself alone, like you really need to question like people's motives more than
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately that's just the world we live in.
True. Well, yeah, and nowadays tensions are very high between different groups of people, and
Oh yeah,
there's a lot of
a lot of lines there.
yeah, there's a lot going on as far as I am absolutely not going to go outside of neutral on what I'm about to say because I don't want this to become any sort of political problem. Um,
Uh,
I don't want to get political
let's
on
hear
this.
it. Let's have it.
No, no. But there are a lot of the world is upside down in many many ways, and people are just they're kind of. I honestly think part of this craze is to kind of take a break, almost like um eh, it's a distraction. Whether it's a distraction from something, I don't know. Maybe it's just an ironic welcome distraction to some of the BS that's just been going on in the world and the country. Maybe, but there's a lot of tension, and there are a lot of people losing their shit lately, and um, I think it's smart to kind of be smart and I don't know, be prepared. I don't think we should live in constant fear, but at the same time, when you know what you know about things, it's hard to not worry. You know, I mean, if I think just be aware, arm yourself with knowledge, be smart, like
And guns,
and guns.
pepper spray, knife, have something. I mean, yeah,
Somebody put a post in one of the groups. I don't even remember what group, and it's about confirmation bias in the media. And I think we can close with this because this is just it. Um, it's really important to understand how confirmation bias interacts with social media. One, people die, homeless people die, hikers die, runaways die, drug users die, and yes, murder victims die. Finding a body means very little without context. Two, people have always died, but with social media now you know about it. If a drug user died of an OD in the woods 20 years ago, it might not even make the local newspaper. Now you're hearing about people who died on the other side of New England. This gives a false sense that the number of dead bodies has gone up. Not necessarily, but now you're hearing about them. I know a friend of mine OD'd behind his house a few years back. It didn't make the news. 3. Murder rates across New England are actually down, as are missing persons cases. Again, the internet just means you hear more about them. 4. When people go missing or when remains are found, the news spreads like wildfire. When a missing person is found, or when those remains turn out to be deer bones, that news doesn't spread as quickly or as far, and even when it does, people tend to forget it. 5. There may be something strange going on, but the statistics don't prove that actually. In fact, they suggest that there's probably nothing unusual about what we're seeing. That doesn't mean there's no serial killer, but it does mean the evidence isn't really lining up that way, at least not yet. So, what is the pattern you're seeing? True story. Cool story, bro. Yeah, that's all I gotta say
and
about that.
it's a wrap. Good night,
It's a wrap.
Brandon.